Shout when you see the notification. I think we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 106 of With Scoop for this start of December, which has been, a medium amount of news week. So we're going to jump right in with what Qualcomm announced on Tuesday and Wednesday with the Snapdragon 888 or 888. That's a bit of a mouthful. The last one there, but yeah. So this is as has been the case for the past few years consistently. Qualcomm announces its flagship offering at the end of the year. And this case, compared to last year specifically, they're just doing the flagship chip instead of what the situation that we had with the 765. But yeah, in just at a high level, Ben, why don't you give us an overview?
So the 888 is, it's a typical upgrade. It's a bit faster. It's got better GPU. Specifically, they had said that people can expect around 25% increase on CPU performance, as well as a up to 35% improvement in GPU performance, which basically just means that the phone's going to run a little bit smoother, the games are going to run a little bit faster, and also because everything's more power efficient, it might be just a little bit better on your battery life. It's good news all around. It's not like some massive leap forward, but it's a welcome upgrade for 2021's phones. And it also has one of the more important parts of it is the fact that, unlike last year where the 5G modem, it was a required part for the OEMs, but it was a separate part. This year it's built into the chip, which just means it's going to be a little bit more power efficient, but also it's going to be a little less expensive in the long run, and also going to take up less room inside the phone, which means that the ridiculous prices of last year might come down just a little bit.
Yeah, this year with the Pixel 5 very clearly, and when you compare it to the non-millimeter wave models, $100 premium. So I'm not sure how much of a discount or better deal we're getting, but the faster the 5G premium goes away, the faster that people can stop criticizing it, I guess, for the unnecessary inclusion this year.
And the speeds, the 5G speeds themselves should be faster too, just because, theoretically anyway, just because it's actually connected to the chip rather than being a separate component.
Yeah, it should make a slight difference. It's all just like slight differences. Like, it's not going to change everything overnight, but it is going to make everything just a little bit better.
Yeah, I just remember there were some complaining that something along the lines of the Pixel 4 being faster on 4G than the Pixel 5 is on 5G. That shouldn't be the case.
Well, no, the 5 has the 765 had a integrated modem too, so that technically should make that's just 5G being 5G in 2020.
True.
But no, there were early complaints, like with some of Samsung phones, that they did have some noticeable disadvantages because the modem was separate. But it's just that was if anything, that was just 5G the 5G train kind of jumping the gun, and now it's actually ready. Kinda. We'll see.
Yeah. So what do we think about the lack of a 788? I'm not sure how they would distinguish the -1 device this year.
To me, I think it's because the 765 ended up being really, really popular, to the point where people like Google just decided we're not going to spend the money for the high-end chip. So maybe they just want to take that emphasis off this year.
Yeah,
maybe
I'm sure it's still in
reset
the
rate
pipeline.
definitely, and maybe see a late in the cycle release. But again, because of the 5G the 5G modem being integrated, I don't think there's going to be a big brouhaha about how again there's a penalty to 5G. So that's a plus. They were Qualcomm wanted to take a crack and they were aiming at Apple Silicon to a degree and the A14 with their faster AI on-device AI tensor component, and that's always an interesting crack when as a major player they try to go after what Apple's doing, but at the same time there's no immediate benefit to more powerful chips, I think, in that, like in the case of Apple's A series chips, the extra throwaway performance you're getting comes in handy if you're keeping your phone for 2, 3, even 4 years down the road, because performance continues to be fine as the OS increases in performance in overhead. So I don't think there's a short in the short term, in the very short term of when you immediately get your phone. I don't really think people should be expecting like that performance improvement because they have the new chip every year.
Yeah, I feel like the extra power, the higher end chips feel more valuable for their GPUs and like the camera ISPs more so than it does for the actual raw performance. Like in terms of actual raw performance, I barely notice the difference between my Pixel 5 and my Galaxy Fold. But in terms of processing photos and stuff like that, there's a lot more of a difference.
So the question is whether when these chips will allow somebody to go head to head with the iPhone's video performance. And I guess in the case of Google, they would want to do computational video down the road, assuming chip performance that is throwaway.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly Qualcomm said that they can do 120 12 megabyte photos per second or something. So I mean, they're getting there. So take some of that, half of that away, and use that power to maybe do that computational enhancements, maybe. But I'm just thinking of like doing computational video. You'd have to sit there and let it process for a long while after the video's been taken.
Yeah, the video. I think people do want to preview video as fast as they can once they take an image. It's again going back to the Pixel. I do feel like the HDR processing just takes a step longer on the Pixel 5 compared to the Pixel 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they went in the opposite direction of what Apple did with the M1. They took away a dedicated chip instead of adding one in.
Yeah, and I guess this is the time when we talk about. So Qualcomm had this list of OEMs that will be using the chip. 14 have been announced, and the significant ones like LG, Motorola, Xiaomi were there. And a lot was being made about Samsung's and to a less degree Google's exclusion there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think in previous years they've always done a list like this, but I can't think for sure if they've ever had Google or Samsung on there. But it does kind of raise the question what's going to happen this year, because with Google, there's been the rumors that they're making their own chip, and supposedly Samsung's new Exynos chips are going to be a lot more powerful than usual. So it's the question of, is Samsung going to go their own route because they're finally catching up, or are they going to stick with Qualcomm, which they have done because historically they're better?
Historically, yeah. I think there is something to be said about how the rumor of Google making their own SoC, which emerged earlier this year and was given some credence during the previous earnings call, where Sundar Pichai said something along the lines of their long-term investments coming, being ready by next year. And the most obvious thing that came to mind for people was their own chipsets for Pixel phones. And obviously that rumor was interesting for saying they were working with Samsung, presumably using Samsung's fabs and general design, and then tweaking it on their own for further enhancements. That if Google and Samsung, if they have something there, it kind of does make sense why they would strike it on their own.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, because them going on their own chipset would have some advantages. Like the neural core on previous phones was a separate chip. If they're making their own chips, they can just integrate it directly.
Yeah, and I don't know if the plan was that if the plan this year was that by next year that component returns, or the functionality of that component returns in some form or fashion, again, it does make sense why this year they chose to depart and have it ready by next year. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it just makes a lot of sense. I kind of get what you're saying. Like if Google is going to go out on their own using Samsung-based chips, it would make sense for Samsung to go out on their own the same year.
Yeah, they must have something there. They must have something where, for one, Samsung sells the most phones of anybody, and they must feel confident in their ability to produce millions and millions of phones with their own chip. And for Google, they must be aware of something impressive that Samsung is doing. I guess one question to think about that is what is the enhancement? What is frankly the bold thing that Samsung is doing that Google itself is taking as an opportunity to join them and not rely on the staple of Qualcomm? What processing is it a performance thing? Is it the ability for Google, I imagine, to really build custom hardware that reflects where the software is going? Or what's the aim there, the long-term aim there?
Or maybe it's like a cost cutting and just being able to put what they want in a chip. Like it could be a matter of maybe they weren't happy with the compromises and the costs that were associated with the 865 or whatever.
Yeah. I'm again, this is where taking a super long-term view on what is just a rumor, but I do wonder so that original report on Whitechapel, which is the code name for this effort, was that it's first coming to phones and then going to Chromebooks, Pixelbooks, I assume. If that's the case, I am thinking about Intel in the context of Intel and what they're doing with their chipsets. I would kind of think that the most obvious enhancement would be on Chromebooks, on that kind of form factor, versus on mobile phones.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'd really like to see some better Chromebooks that aren't Intel based. Like even the MediaTek Chromebooks have been surprisingly good, and I think pushing a little harder, putting something like Whitechapel onto Chromebooks would be a very big advancement that could potentially put them on the level with like the MacBook Air and things like that. Potentially,
but given what
you
Intel,
you have to kind of think back though. My only hesitation with that is you got to really hope Samsung's gotten a lot better with Exynos, because if you remember, like the first big breakout Chromebook was the Samsung Exynos powered one, and it was kind of crap, honestly. Like looking
Wait,
back at it,
the Chromebook 5, was it? The
three
one
or
with
something. The one where it
3.
kind of had like it had the weird hinge, but
Yeah,
it was an
yeah.
Exynos Chromebook. It was it was their first huge hit Chromebook, but man, looking back, that thing was not good.
Yeah, I ended up going with the Asus C720, the True and Pride.
I bought the Samsung and then traded because I couldn't put up with the Samsung anymore.
It did look so much better though, so
Oh, yeah.
that's a shame. Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with Chrome OS just getting better over the years, in addition to just better hardware. But yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that's the 888 from Qualcomm, and I'm sure if Samsung is not announcing with it first, I guess we're seeing more end of Q1 in that time frame for when everybody else comes along. It would kind of be interesting if, given like the volume of Samsung not being there anymore, if it allows other companies a chance to launch sooner with their flagship devices and offer up a true competitor.
I mean, we're going to find out next month, aren't we? The rumors of the S21 are putting it next month, right?
Yep, January 14th or something like that.
Oh, that's now the start of the year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that could be Samsung's opportunity to take the CES mind space from everybody else in a way. So yeah, again, that's Qualcomm. Next, we have the Pixel 4a 5G, which was reviewed by Damien in the UK. And price perfect pixel is what he calls it. And he's had quite a bit of time to go hands-on with the 4a and the 5. And it's interesting him reviewing the Pixel 4a 5G last in terms of like a real Goldilocks situation. But in general, there's a lot of interest in this, and it kind of really happened organically in terms of how this phone became, how the consensus is growing on this phone as being the ideal one for this year.
Yeah, I remember when we first started hearing about it, it seemed like kind of pointless just to have a second 4A just for 5G. But yeah, it kind of has changed a lot. Now that we know the pricing and how everything compares, $499 for the performance of a Pixel 5, just minus the wireless charging and a couple other things, it's a good deal. It's a good phone.
So
because the Pixel 5 missed the mark so much as far as the premium designation, it really, unless wireless charging is important to you and things like that, yeah, the 4A 5G just makes sense.
Yeah, do you think that people, of the fact that it's 5G and it has the largest screen, what is the most appealing about this phone?
Honestly, just the value.
Yeah,
The value proposition.
It's like, in terms of just raw value, it's arguably just as good of a value as the regular 4A, which is already arguably the best value in any phone right now.
And
I just can't believe that it's $500. Like that's amazing.
And
it's
then
amazing.
and then Google over Black Friday, and I believe the promotion is still running. They increased the trade-in values for Pixel 2 and Pixel 3 owners. So it's interesting how the target for Google, of those people that bought those two over the generations, is this phone. I'm so curious about why they're deciding to do that. Because is it either because of the affordability or what? It's interesting where Google is moving people to.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it might be just the idea that these people that held onto their phone for that long are probably more value minded and aren't the folks that are buying the Pixel flagship every year.
But they could have definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say, whatever it was, it definitely worked. I had a friend of mine who I didn't even know he had a Pixel 3, but he texted me out of the blue just saying, "Hey, I saw that deal. I'm trying to get it." I was like, "Yeah, it's a great deal for older Pixel fans, and it makes sense for Google to try to push them to what's new."
Yeah, undoubtedly it's new. It has so much of what the Pixel 5 has already. But uh, again, if those people are holding on to these phones for that long, there is a case of Google pushing them to the Pixel 5 and having them experience the absolute best, both performance and quality wise, give or take.
Yeah, I think it's weird that they're not pushing the 5, like both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd think, if anything, they would let you get the same trade-in value for the 4A 5G and the 5. But
Or just the 4A. Trade it in, get it for free.
I feel like the
Yeah.
reason they're not doing it for the 4A is just because that phone is already so cheap.
Totally.
Like there's no room for them to subsidize anything else. Because I mean, we originally it was supposed to be $399, and then they dropped it before the launch.
Yeah, and that
So
is
that kind of
yeah,
eats up some of their room to subsidize.
yeah, that is true. So yeah, in comparison to, so again, like comparing the Pixel 4a 5G and 5 as you head into the holiday season, I the I predominantly still want to push people towards the 5 in terms of just like longevity. I don't know, 2 gigs of RAM could go a long way for however long people keep their phones. I mean, it's again, like you were saying, the value argument. The value is fantastic, but if you really want people to keep the phones for a long time, it's the Pixel 4a 5G isn't. It's not a perfect case, really.
I don't know though, because there are certain things about it, like the the by being a more affordable phone, the parts in it are more affordable too. So if anything goes wrong with your phone over the course of that time, it's cheaper to replace it.
Yeah,
I would
that's
assume.
true. Yeah, there's a logic to that. And okay, that's this year. That's how 2020 has shaken out, with this year being what it was.
Mm.
But what is the next phone what is the next phone that Pixel 4a 5G buyers get? What is their let's say you had a Pixel 3 or you had a Pixel 2 XL, and then and then for this generation, for this cycle, you buy a 4a 5G. Does that condition you to look for the next 5A, or because once you go down and realize that all the value, everything you need is in a quote unquote mid-range phone, it becomes the chasm to go up to the flagship, to the most expensive thing, really does increase. And I'm not sure that if Google is making that conscious decision about, because I kind of think once you're a mid-range buyer, you kind of stay there happily.
I think part of the trick here is that with this particular mid-range phone, they put the premium features of that year's flagship phone into it, is releasing side by side, as it were. Where previously the 3A had the things of 6 months ago's Pixel 3, the 4A had things of 6 months ago's 4, where the 4A 5G and the 5 are side by side with the exact same camera module, the exact same or almost exact same performance. This year is interesting for sure. I don't know if they're going to repeat it, just because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the fact that they went this strategy doesn't seem to be like an inspired decision versus a more because this was the state of the world, because that's what they had to do.
I don't know that they had the forethought for that. I feel like they just got lucky.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it kind of does seem that they got lucky there, But again, like, what is the upgrade path? How do they convince future 4A 5G buyers to go one up in terms of functionality and, more importantly, pricing?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting how they play out. And I don't know, amid rumor, if Google is finding their success, if they truly have settled on the A line being their primary money maker, that's going to change a lot of things. And I don't know, maybe in the end everybody will land on an A phone. But it's kind of interesting that the phone that's the derivative, that's the one that's released a few months earlier or later, if you're comparing it to the last year or the upcoming generation's phone. It's an interesting challenge for them, to say the least.
I think it's all going to come down to what the Pixel 6 looks like. Like one of our commenters here is saying how, or suggesting that maybe Soli and Face Unlock and things like that can come back, but I don't think that those are the features that are going to appeal to somebody that
I agree.
that owns the Pixel 4a 5G. They're not looking for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the software is like the useful features that Google is giving in people's lives. I think that is increasingly will be the main appeal, and of course the camera, which is a key part of everything. So I guess if they can do a moonshot leap with the camera, like on the scale of the Pixel 2, I think they'll have something there very straightforward. But we really have not heard what camera rumors about what's coming next.
Possibly because it just hasn't changed in all these years.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah. So yeah, that's the Pixel 4a 5G. Again, perfect. It's the timing is for the holiday season, obviously, and what comes next. So yeah, and to wrap up this slightly shorter show this week, there was a ton of Stadia news today, including this holiday live hangout event, Kyle.
Yeah. Today they dropped announcements of 4 titles, including 2 that are released today, which I thought was really cool to just like the one game that we've been anticipating for a good long while from Stadia Games Entertainment, the game Outcasters. They've been showing us trailers and stuff on that game for months and months, and they dropped that today without any as a surprise. But they also dropped a game that wasn't so great, another surprise game, Submerged Hidden Depths, but we're not going to talk about that game because I don't want to talk about that game anymore. But you could read our review. Between that and announcements of Journey to the Savage Planet, which was the game that was released by their Typhoon Studios, and Valkyria Chronicles 4 was the 4 main announcements of this Stadia Live Hangout. I thought that was really cool. This was like a more personal version of the Kinect, and it was cool that it was actually live.
Yeah,
most of the Kinects have been pre-records.
There's definitely a difference in that. There's an intimacy there when it's not so polished, when you know that mistakes can happen. There's vulnerability, to say the least. But there's a realness and interaction in the community that really does help people.
Yeah, and it was really cool to watch on Twitter the Stadia community tweeting about, I got on the stream. It was really cool to see that happening because they dropped it live. They dropped the game live. Everybody flocked onto it and started playing through crowd play. And it was a cool moment. It was a really cool moment to be a part of.
Yeah, and as we slowly, whenever YouTube, when that full potential of seeing a YouTube, a YouTube box for Stadia underneath gameplay videos or whatever, that full integration comes, that'll be.
I think to a certain extent that was here today. I really do. That was there was a nice combination of crowd choice for voting and crowd play for playing along. It was a nice combination of the two.
So yeah, this holiday live hangout, which is definitely a new format for them. So do we think this is the last big movement for Stadia this year, or do we think that it'll be something in the coming weeks and such, besides Cyberpunk, of course?
They definitely have more up their sleeves because they had promised, what was it, 135 games by the end of the year, and I think they're still about 10 away from that, give or take. I can't remember what's currently there off the top of my head, but they've got at least a handful of more of further announcements coming. One of them probably being Madden 21, because EA had said that will be released by end of the year. So
yeah,
there's a big drop of games today, and I'm sure there's going to be pretty much just Cyberpunk next Thursday, but then there's going to be another big drop of games the following week. Everybody's trying to give Cyberpunk that week of buffer because they don't want to be the game that drops that day and doesn't get played.
Yeah.
That's and in terms, I wonder how big of a test, how big of a performance strain Google will see with the launch of Cyberpunk in terms of everybody wanting to stream it, wanting to access it immediately. There's so much potential to get newcomers there.
Yeah, I mean it's appealed to even some of our own team members, like our Bradley. Our Bradley was didn't really get into Stadia until this Cyberpunk promotion came up. He read about the Cyberpunk promotion, and that appealed to him instantly. Like being able to just pre-order the game and get hardware with it, like that it has such a massive appeal.
Yeah, and I do wonder how long it gets people in there.
Yeah. I mean, at least for the month that you get the free Stadia Pro with your subscription, but your free trial.
So yeah, that was what happened with Stadia. Let's see. We'll keep this running for a few more minutes to see if anybody has questions. But overall, it's a bit of a quiet week on this week. There was a lot of Android stuff today, but I guess the highlight is Nearby Share, that allowing
Emoji
people
Kitchen.
Yeah,
It's Emoji Kitchen.
Yeah, that's
I wanted to
best
not
feature.
have to talk about.
That's the best feature that's ever happened.
But they're not really emoji,
No, that's fine. I still love them to death.
I can't get over the fact that it's called Emoji Kitchen and they're not emojis, because
they are emojis. They're just sticker emojis.
They're images. You're sending people images.
Yeah, that's a popular thing on like WhatsApp and everything.
Those feel
used so commonly.
As an emoji purist, I firmly believe in the Unicode standard of a consistency of those tiny.
Okay, I mean, I still firmly believe that the blobs are best, but that's not going to change other people's opinions.
Okay, the art behind emoji is that they're small. I firmly believe that the tiny nature gives them their charm. And when you blow them up, you see these details, which are often and gross combinations. And that's a step too far.
Tell that to everyone who uses Bitmojis and Memojis on iPhones. I mean, it's the same basic concept, except these are just a little more ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Too ridiculous.
No, I don't think they're too ridiculous.
The charm in Memoji.
Some of them are.
Because I just got an iOS device that can do Memoji for the first time. The absolute brilliant charm there is how it does like a pretty good job conveying your facial emotions. And with Memoji, some of these combinations are weird. the emoji kitchen can allow for some pretty weird things.
Oh yes, it can, and that's what makes it great.
I know you mix anything with poop, and it's great. Like I sent somebody a poop confetti earlier, and it was great. Poop ice cream. I mean, it's wonderful.
You can have a turtle, but his shell is a poop. It's great.
You could put a cowboy hat on a turtle. It's amazing. Cowboy hats on everything, masks on everything.
It's fun. That's all it is. It's fun. It's good, clean fun.
It does not live up to the name of emoji, and Google is doing a disservice by making people think this is what emoji is.
I'm sending you a cowboy right now.
Yeah, I'm sending you one too.
My opinion. There's a charm to tiny things too. I don't know. That's just me ranting and sounding super old. But yeah,
a little bit.
But yeah, I like emoji. I like the classic emoji, and it's charming.
I think an interesting thing is that Google could appeal for these to become part of the Unicode standard at any time, because right now there are emojis that exist that all it is a sequence of emojis that come together to form like there are a lot of the emojis that are that have skin tone variations. Those are two emojis just kind of written side by side that become one when they're printed. So two cowboy hats together could become that cowboy, that strange cowboy made of cowboy emojis or something, or whatever.
I feel like what you're saying is that the Unicode standard, where everybody, like where all the companies, where Apple, where Microsoft, Samsung, Twitter, etc., instead of them having to draw all these emojis, I think you're leaning towards a future where it's AI generated. I feel like that's what they're going to.
That'd be cool.
In slight emoji news, I think it was after the show last week, was when there's the groundwork that Google might be letting emoji updates happen independent of Android updates.
Yes.
So that's fantastic news.
Honestly, the best use of mainline modules yet.
Yes, indeed.
If that's what they're using it for, however they're doing it, it's great.
But if it'll be hilarious if that takes away the incentive for people to download the major update every year, because there is always some hesitation, which is always interesting that still occurs.
Yeah, but I think Google wants to move Android to be more like Mac OS and more like Windows 10. Or actually, let's just say more like Windows 10, where there aren't necessarily major updates, and that they could just update components and things just change sometimes, rather than this constant annual cycle.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think in terms of that annual cycle, who knows what's happening next? But I don't know. It is. Yeah, if Google's foreseeable future with mainline, if everything goes according to plan, I don't know if the yearly cadence is the right one versus, I don't know, Chrome OS's 6-week cycles. If you eventually obviate the number, they already obviated the version name. I think that's an exciting future on what it means to be an operating system.
Or we could just switch to Fuchsia and call it all done, right?
Oh, yes. We would talk about Fuchsia, but unfortunately we're out of time this week, so you'll have to tune in some other time for that. So this has been Alphabet Scoop. Thank you for listening. We record this podcast every Thursday, and publish every Friday morning now. And you can find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms, such as Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, and you can listen to our site at 9to5google.com. Thank you again for listening, and thank you to Ben and Kyle for joining me. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.